real estate, there's some times where it's 90 to 120 days before you get paid again. And sure, we get paid really well, but that means we're eating ramen for 120 days, And so building up these additional income streams, and if they're complementary to real estate, then great. But I think for me, I really found the power in the diversification, because when you go all in on one thing, when that one thing changes with, factors that are beyond our control, you're kind of up shit's creek.
Tim here, welcome back to another episode. This one we're at the end of 2024, going into 2025. Kind of just want to take time, talk about our personal goals, whatever you want to call it, for 2025, and where do we see the market headed in 2025? It's been 2023 was rough, 2024 not really any better. What do you see on the horizon, and how are you going to capitalize on that? So,
yeah, I think I came into real estate in 2019 is when we bought our first property, and then 2020 bought our first investment, and then 2021 I got licensed. And so I kind of came up in the time where if you had a pulse, you were doing well in real estate. And I fully recognized that I had the wind at my back, which is why I was able to do so well. And when you come into a market like we're in right now, where the interest rates go up, taxes and insurance go up significantly, it takes a lot more skill to thrive in real estate. And whereas the the end of 2023, there was 4,000 real estate agents in this area. Right now, there's probably 2,500. If not less.
And how many of those are active? I have my license, but I'm not active.
Right. And that's a significant portion of them, because when the wind's at your back, you find the buyer that wants to buy, you're going to get a deal. There's plenty of opportunity. When it's a strong seller's market and a strong buyer's market, you can close deals pretty easily. When it's a balanced market, the Pareto principle really takes into effect, because 20% of the agents are going to do 80% of the volume. And I believe the same is true on the commercial side, is that 20% of the brokers are going to do 80% of the business. So in this type of market, you got to get more creative. You got to do the things that people aren't really willing to do. Get out, take more meetings, more cold calling, more direct mail, more everything. And if you're not, people get comfortable in a good market where the wind is at their back, where maybe they're cold calling a few days a week and they can get by. They can close, bring in 10, 15,000 in gross commission income a month. But as soon as that shifts, it takes, I'd say, 60% more effort to stay at the same volume. And so when we came into that, we were, moving brokerages, trying to figure out our path. We set up our own brokerage and all that stuff. And we realized that I just didn't want to do the things that were required to be successful, at the size volume that I was doing. And I did, really good volume, but it took a lot of my time, and I was just burnt out by it. And so we started evaluating what fills our cup and how can we implement other things to kind of support that. And so during the transition, I went and got my CDL. I started driving trucks because I really wanted to learn that industry so that I can increase my income streams. And if I can just create, 5 different $100,000 income streams, and my wife creates 5, $100,000 income streams, we're at 100,000 or at $1 million, net. And so with me, I'm focusing more on the trades that aren't going anywhere. I want to buy businesses that are in the trucking industry, that are plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and take my business acumen to go and implement the systems to make those thrive. And realizing that it's going to take a time commitment up front that most people that buy businesses aren't willing to do. They don't want to be in the business. They want a straight passive income stream. I think the word passive income is a joke. But if I can go in and work on these businesses, build them, package them together, sell them for a 5x multiple in 5 years, that's a pretty good exit for me. So for me, it's building up those income streams and the people that I meet along the way that want to do commercial real estate. I still have my list of investors that I help find deals and doing development projects and raising capital, doing all those things. So we still have that, in the works, but it's building up all these additional income streams, because in real estate, there's some days where there's some times where it's 90 to 120 days before you get paid again. And sure, we get paid really well, but that means we're eating ramen for 120 days, And so building up these additional income streams, and if they're complementary to real estate, then great. But I think for me, I really found the power in the diversification, because when you go all in on one thing, when that one thing changes with, factors that are beyond our control, you're kind of up shit's creek. So diversification, I think, is an overused term, and it can mean very many different things. You can diversify your real estate investments, you can diversify what industries you're in, you can diversify your location. Like, there's so many different ways to go about it. But from what I've seen, what's the term about the most millionaires were made in real estate, but the most billionaires were made in business, yeah. And Cody Sanchez has a thing about, you can buy a piece of real estate for $1 million, and in a few years, maybe you sell it for $2 million. Like, that'd be great. But in business, you can buy a business for $1 million and you can sell it for 10 to 20 million, just by going in and implementing the right systems, increasing your market share, all these things. So it's much more relative, I think, to the effort that you put into it. Now, sure, in real estate, you can buy a good deal. You have, the power of having an asset against it. But if I can buy businesses that also own real estate, I'm just protecting myself even further. So at a high level, that's kind of my philosophy, is buy businesses that are complementary to the real estate, and then also buy businesses that have nothing to do with real estate. The transportation industry, trucking, it's going to be around if all the real estate in the country crumbles, because people still need to ship goods. It's still how, we move things. So it's something that I've really grown to enjoy. Like, I can sit in a truck, drive 16 hours and just listen to podcasts all day. And I'm listening to, Christians talk to atheists, and, all kinds of different business philosophy, Charlie Munger, like everything you can think of. And I think it's just developing my mind more, where I'm kind of back into that intro, like what is the term about, you live two lives. It's like one where you think you know everything, and then the second is when you realize you know nothing.
Yeah, it's called Dunning-Kruger effect.
That's right.
Where that term comes from, but yeah.
Yeah, and I've just been discovering that, and I'm enjoying this journey a lot, just realizing that how little I know about so many things. And so just enjoying that part of the journey and diversifying. So, but I'm definitely interested to hear your perspective on the diversification and where you see 2025 going. I think that there's never a bad time to buy real estate. And I think being in commercial real estate, there's so many different asset classes where maybe multifamily doesn't make sense right now, but industrial is doing really well, and they can't build it fast enough. So if I buy some land, do some land development, I can either build the industrial or sell the land off to an industrial builder. Or, there's just so many different ways to invest when you get creative. And I don't think there's any wrong way, especially in a growing market. And our market is growing significantly. So,
yeah, I think our philosophies on that are pretty aligned. I'm not interested in getting a trucking market, or trucking business, but
not a lot of people are.
That's just a personal preference. So, to that point, though, I think it's very important to get involved with something that you're familiar with, or something that's simple enough for you to understand. And first of all, say my 2025 goal, and then I'll kind of go into that, why I believe that. So for me in 2025, I'm under contract for a plumbing business. It comes, you mentioned industrial, comes with a little bit over 13,000 square foot industrial building, a couple tenants in there. So kind of diversified there, which I think diversified is an overused word. But that's...
Well, but the diversification offers you another exit strategy. I think that's kind of what we're getting at.
Well, I just mean diversification in general. Like, it's go down a whole rabbit hole about the stock market, but I think it's a stock market term that has trickled its way to other investments. So that's a whole hour podcast by itself.
Absolutely.
But that's my number one play. So the company's been around for 20 years, and the guy's plumber by trade, not a business guy, and he's built it to where he can build it. And The deal was brought to me, and it has the real estate piece on it, so I can I can use the leverage of the real estate and the assets of the business to help get a loan using a SBA 7A loan, which is you can actually go up to 85% loan to value on it, so that's good in that regard. So basically, right now, I just read an email this morning, but you get it appraised and kind of go from there. So a few weeks out from that, hopefully, I'd like to close on my birthday in a few weeks. Think it'd be a cool birthday present, but
Yeah, the big 5-0.
yeah, getting close. But yeah, that's my number one thing is there's already an operator in place, but put in the systems, processes, and take it from a 2-3x multiple, like you said, 5-6, wherever it goes, multiple. Because that's one thing I like about business and businesses that can sell. A lot of people build real estate business, so they'll build a flipping business, or they'll build a wholesaling business, or something like that. Even construction to a lesser degree. Those things don't sell well. Like, I don't know anybody that's ever sold a wholesaling business.
Right.
I don't know anybody that's ever sold a flipping business.
Unless they're buying the contact list. If they're buying that, I think that the contact list has more value than the historical flipping or wholesale profits. Yeah, it's not valued the same way that a business would.
No, like you're just buying, and even then I would do it on a profit share. Like, okay, I'll buy this and give you 20% on every dollar I make, or whatever it is. But that's kind of my goal is to take this, not only increase profits, which I think based on the size of the company, they're underperforming. And so take that, increase revenue, put in systems, processes, and back-end support to help grow. And then that'll increase the multiple of the company. So take it, like I said, from 2-3x multiple to 4, 5, 6, 7x. So
yeah, and that's great. I mean, I was listening to a Ryan Pineda podcast the other day where he was talking to a guy that does this at a high scale. And what he was saying is, with real estate, typically you're going to have to put some kind of equity in. If it's not your own equity, you got to raise it. Even if you get seller financing, you still have to put some kind of money into it. Businesses, if you're just doing a straight purchase, yeah, you're probably going to have to put equity into it. But what he looks for is the distressed sellers and I think that's kind of one of the reasons that we wanted to start this podcast, is that from the outside looking in, if you see that store that you drive by every single day, you might be thinking, oh gosh, the guy that owns that must be super wealthy, but he might be going through the same struggles, personnel, dealing with cash flow issues, all those things are prevalent no matter what size the business is. And Alex Ramosi said it, that doesn't matter whether you are doing your first deal or you're $1 billion entrepreneur. We're all trying to figure it out. None of us have it all figured out. We're all kind of just trying things and seeing what works. And especially when it comes to marketing, advertising, stuff like that industry is constantly changing. And this episode with Ryan Pineda, the guy said that he had someone that came to him, just was in tears. Like, everyone thought that he had a super profitable business, but in the Dave Ramsey quote, if you have a $20 million business and you're spending $21 million, you're bankrupt. So from the outside, this guy is making $20 million, but he's probably not. And so this guy came into this business, saw the processes that could be improved. And the first thing that he did was, this guy was taking out payday loans to pay his employees. And when those matured, he owed I think it was $2,000 or $4,000 a day in interest. And so this guy said, I will come into your business. I'm going to clean things up. I'm going to make sure you don't lose your house. I'm going to make sure you don't blow your brains out. And I'll split all the profits with you 50-50. So he came in, negotiated with these creditors, and just said, you're going after this guy. He's going to go bankrupt. You're not going to get anything. But if you work with me and restructure these loans, then I will make sure that you get paid back plus all your back to interest. And every creditor was willing to work with him on it. And Now they're doing $40,000 or $80,000 a month in profit. He's making $40,000 just for going in and having a conversation that most people don't have the confidence or the skill set to have.
So this guy took 50% of the earnings afterwards.
Right.
So yeah, so we'll take it home $500,000. The guy went from losing money to making $500,000.
Pretty, yeah. Absolutely.
So, there's plenty of ways to get in business. Actually, Cody Sanchez just came out, you mentioned earlier, just came out with a book released last week.
I saw that.
So I just finished it this morning. But what I think is interesting about it is, so she's the small business buying person on, social media, if you will. But half the book was talking about after you bought it, like getting it your first 30, 60, 90, 120 days, and then harnessing everything after that, and taking it, like it even talks about selling and kind of maximizing. She has that, it's a cake in there, and she like puts the layers in it. But yeah, it's, there's so many things to business and real estate and all that. And my number one reason for it is I believe in real estate wholeheartedly. Like that's why I'm buying the building with the business. But it's more of a long-term play. You're not
driving a Ferrari in year one.
Correct. Like it's a 10, 15, 20 year play. If you're just doing real estate alone.
Right.
And I'm not saying I'm getting into this for the exit, but that potential's there.
Right.
And so, like, you can build something and you're making good money off from it. You're able to provide back to the government. Don't provide back to government. I mean, you are providing back to government by doing jobs and helping the economy and all that, but I mean the community when I say government, but giving back to your local church or different missions that you're part of, or like I think that's where the true benefit is to society. At the end of Cody's book, she talks about how you can change history with just 1 to 5% of the population. And you have State Street, BlackRock, KBR, all these big companies, Amazon, are buying up so much. Like it was in 2022, 2023, 1 in 4 houses sold were to one of these big companies. Like they were coming in, buying everything, turning them into rentals because they're getting money, pennies on the dollar compared to what we give money for.
Yeah.
And I think the only way to combat that is to own a piece of America. And if enough people do it, then we can change the tide.
I got some controversial. I want to ask your opinion of. It's been proposed many times, and it's very controversial. Do you think that entities should be able to own single-family properties?
So I have entities that own single-family.
I mean, we do too, yeah. So I have an opinion on it.
But as a general wave of the wand, I would say no.
I agree. I don't think so either. I think that right now we have an affordability issue where developers can't build a house cheap enough for the median income. And granted, people use the statistic of how much easier it was to buy a house back in the early or mid 1900s. All that stuff aside, if a builder putting bare bone materials, cutting corners, doing whatever, can't put a house up for cheaper than $275,000, $300,000, they're not going to make any profit on that. That means people are entering the market with first-time home buyers, and we are in the Midwest. We're not an extremely overpriced market, and you can't get a house really for less than $300,000 that's not falling apart.
So I would push back on that a little bit, and I understand what the numbers say, but my issue with that is let's look at the square footage of a house. built in 1950. Let's look at a square footage of your typical house today. They're quite a bit bigger. So you can't strictly look at home prices. So when you're talking about a 3-2 where you had a family of 8 living in a 3-2 that was 800 square feet, and you're comparing it to a 3-2 now that's
2,400 square feet.
correct.
Yeah.
Like you're comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest issue with that. And then also, what are you putting in those houses? They didn't have microwaves. They didn't have all these fancy stoves that we're putting in everywhere. Like, we're putting a lot of tech in the houses. We're putting a lot of luxury in even starter homes.
So, I mean, if you're talking about like D.R. Horton homes and stuff, like, yeah, they're trying to appeal to that $400,000 to $500,000 range in our market. And that's why the median price for new construction homes is like $427,000. Whereas existing homes, the average is $310,000. So for a new construction home to be below $300,000, even if they're making it 1,000 square feet, which they could, but when you're talking about the density and how many houses per acre they're allowed to put, there's a threshold there where their costs are too high, and if they go up into that next price point, then they make some kind of a profit margin by. There's a whole dynamic to the building industry, and I just think that with entities being allowed to scoop up all these big houses, it's forcing people to stay renters. And I think that if, like you said, wave the wand, they just made it where you have to live in the single family home that you own. I think it would open up a lot of opportunity because there's a lot more supply. And the lending products, I think, are very favorable for people to get into that, but there's not enough education. And the majority of people that I talk to that want to get into a house, they don't know about the FHA loan. They don't know about the I don't think it's been a long time since I did residential, but what's the NIFA? Yes, the Nebraska First Time Home Buyer Assistance. People can get into a house with 1% down. You're buying a $200,000 house with $2,000. That's pretty much your security deposit if you're renting a property.
Correct.
So I think that entities should stay in 2 to 4 units if they're doing residential. But also, I still have the opinion that if it's a multi-family property, it is. I mean, I listened to I can't remember his name, but this guy on YouTube was talking about how if you live in the house, it's a residential property, and that's a huge divide in commercial, where multifamily is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of commercial, and it should have its own type of funding. Like, I believe you should be able to move into an 8-plex with a residential loan if you can afford the down payment. You know, if you can do a 3.5% down on an 8-plex, then absolutely you should be able to. I don't agree with them limiting it to 1 to 4 units. And I know all the negatives that are associated with it, so I don't know that would be a great idea. But separating entities from buying single family houses, I believe, would solve the shortage problem that we have.
It would definitely, yeah. I mean, because you put a lot of rentals back in the market for people to own.
And then when there's that much inventory, what does it do to pricing?
It's going to go down.
Exactly. And so now you have properties that were $300,000 that now are, $120,000. People can get into the market, build some kind of equity. And the people that are looking at $120,000 single family houses are not looking to build these massive businesses, but they want to own something. Like, for that might be their entire family's legacy, is that they owned a home. And I thought about that a lot talking to Nicole, where in Hawaii, there is not a lot of home ownership because it's so expensive. And we're seeing that as an extreme example of what we're seeing here stateside, is that it's becoming so expensive to own a home that people will be lifetime renters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, speaking of buying homes, where do you see rates at in 2025?
I've said this for a few years now. We can look back at our old podcast, and I feel like I had some predictions that I want to see if are coming to fruition. But I really think that they're going to settle around that 5.5% to 6% mark. I think the lowest that we will see for the next decade is going to be 5%. And that's an extreme example. I don't know that we'll see that, but I think right around 5.5% to 6% is where they'll start to balance, and that will become the new norm. we're going to see it in the spring. This spring is going to be the indicator as to how people have adjusted to the new interest rates, because they're still sitting around like 6.5%, 7%. And in March, where we see is the most increase in demand, the problem we saw last spring is the interest rates were still a little bit higher. We saw an increase here, specifically in our market. We saw an increase in the demand faster than the increase in supply, which is what keeps the home prices going up, which is why even though we have 50% less homes on the market, we're seeing a 10% year over year increase in price, because they're still competitive. They were still having multiple offer scenarios. And a lot of that comes from homeowners that locked in a 2.5% interest rate that say, I would have to double my monthly payment to move into a property that's the same size as the one I'm in. So they just stay put, decreases inventory. But as soon as that comes down, a lot of those homeowners don't know how to access the equity that they built in their home. So they're going to be more willing to sell their house, put the minimum down payment on the next house, which then increases the demand, offers more supply. It's a revolving circle. So I see prices are going to continue to go up. I think that investments are going to start to make sense again. We've seen a slight expansion of the cap rates. So I think it's going to be a good spring, honestly, for real estate. I think it's going to get back to a new normal. And I really like balanced markets. I don't like a strong seller's market. I don't like a strong buyer's market. Strong buyer's market, for example, is after the 2008 crisis. That was a buyer's market. It was buy everything you can get your hands on. Strong seller's market is what we saw from post-COVID, where sellers were getting crazy, multiple offer scenarios. People were waiving contingencies. They were, I put the most crazy things in my offers when I was doing residential, like buyer will pay for 2 years of Netflix subscriptions, like just to stand out in 15 different offers. And people are going to remember the one that had Netflix on it, and just simple things like that. And now that we're in a new normal, it's a lot more fair trading. It's a lot more of like, I want to buy, you want to sell. How can we work out a deal? So I think that's my prediction going into 2025.
And going back to businesses and what you just said about, I think that's one of the things I like about business buying. It's more of a fair trade issue. It's how do you get to a deal versus sometimes especially in single family homes, it's how much can I get off from this?
Yeah. So, and that's the difference in the mentalities is take. I think it's going to be an interesting year.
Cool. Well, be interested to come back and see this in a year and see where we're at. So on that, we'll see our way out, especially because the screen just went blank.